Hi, everyone. You are watching The Self Connection with Ginny Brown and Kelly Pietro, where we have conversations with a group of Ascended Masters known as the Multitude of the Greater Good.
Multitude of the greater good has access to information from the day of creation to the present time, plus whatever you have decided to accomplish in this lifetime. In our in our estimation, we are most pleased to be able to share that which we know and help each of you move forward. Do not be concerned. We are ready, willing, and able. Thank you very much for listening.
Guess they're ready.
So, and even need to ask the question this time.
That's awesome. All right. Well, Ginny, thanks for being here. Thanks to the multitude for being here. And I kind of wanted to continue on with a bit of a theme. We talked about, I think, fear in a previous episode. Um, in keeping with these themes, well, I call them themes. I think the multitude would say they're not associated with the chakras, but it's how I relate to them. Kind of like the downfalls of the chakras. And one that I would like to talk about because it's often associated with the sacral chakra is guilt, the feeling and energy of guilt, and how that plays a role in our growth, or maybe it hinders our growth. So I'd love to have a conversation about that today. You up for it, Jenny?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. So in what ways does guilt necessitate growth?
It is important to understand, my dear, that everything necessitates growth, whether it be guilt, hurt, fear, love, enjoyment, fun, contentment. It is all part and parcel of one's growth of being. We would highly recommend that you not focus so much on guilt, as guilt is a feeling that is truth. However, it is a feeling that is not necessary to be carried from one lifetime to another, from one part of oneself to another, from one experience to another. We would highly recommend that when one notices guilt, that one say, I have done the best I can do. I have done what I knew to be to the best of my ability at the time that I did it. We would highly recommend that not only do you allow yourself to disassociate from the guilt feeling by being the best you that you can be, but allow yourself to understand that sometimes when one does something that one is not particularly proud of, it is in connection or in resonance with the individual or thing that had been, worked with at the time, in order to allow not only growth for oneself, but growth for the other. If the growth for oneself is not necessary, one sometimes associates it as having done the wrong thing for the other person. However, in our estimation, when one allows oneself to do something that is not normally a part of their repertoire, so to speak, they are working in behalf of the other person or on behalf of the other person. As much has been decided on the spiritual plane before one comes to the earth plane, and 99% of the time, it allows one to experience more of oneself and less of the other. Therefore, the one who is feeling the guilt is not necessarily able to allow oneself the ability to just stopped. It just stopped.
And move forward, maybe. Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess they don't want to talk about it.
Talk about it, but it's like, it's sometimes for the benefit of the other person. That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, yeah. So that's really interesting that, when we talk about these like what we would call maybe negative emotions or vibrations. Because I was going to get into guilt, shame, grief, all these things, but it sounds like they're like, don't worry about that. But here's the thing, multitude. These are things that we deal with on the earth plane, and they're very heavy, and they can get people stuck. And so it's helpful, I think, to bring a higher perspective, which I think they just did, around these things so that people can free themselves
Mhm.
of these dense, harmful vibrations. Well, we call them harmful. Um, but what I heard them say was, you know, one thing that I like is that they don't carry into future lifetimes, those feelings. And I remember them saying that in a past video. Because we often think about karma, right? Like, oh, if you feel guilty now, it's going to follow you into another lifetime. And
I have said over and over, to me for years, there's no more karma.
yeah,
There's no more karma. It's been,
yeah,
well, whatever happened to it, I don't know, but it doesn't happen anymore.
I love that. Um, but from what it sounds like, that, like, in other words, to try to see these things as a place to grow from, that maybe you did something, because guilt is like feeling that you did something wrong, where shame is feeling like you, or guilt is I did a bad thing, shame is I am a bad person, right? It's like sometimes how people differentiate the two. But maybe you feel like you did something out of character and you're ashamed of that, and so you're guilty of what you would say is wrong. But actually, what they said, the very first thing was everything necessitates growth. So to see that as a springboard for growth to move on from, because being stuck in that vibration of guilt is doesn't serve anyone or anything. So of course, like making amends and apologizing where you can, right? Well, what do they have for advice for um like what is the antidote to guilt feelings?
It is important to understand that if one chooses to feel guilt, one can feel guilt. However, there is no real antidote. It is that one chooses to feel guilt or chooses not to feel guilt. In our estimation, it is a matter of understanding that there is much learned from the feeling of guilt. There is also much freed and released from the feelings of guilt. And then there is also that part that says, I did the best I could do based on the information I had, and that is all that I could do. And when one looks at it from that perspective, they are much more easily able to allow themselves to release themselves from any, what is it? It's like it's behavior that they are not necessarily proud of or part of or whatever. In our estimation, my dear, it is important to understand that when one can release oneself from shame or guilt, the upheaval to one's life is released, therefore allowing the individual to move oneself forward in the best way possible for oneself. When one is stuck, so to speak, in guilt or shame, one is not able to move forward to the next step and the next step. One is stuck in that place of saying, it's like I am a bad person, I am not worthy, it is not right what I did. And therefore, one needs to make amends of sorts to oneself and allow oneself the ability and the responsibility. And I keep saying, taking oneself off the hook and allowing oneself to move forward in the way that is best for them. Do not be concerned. And I always say myself, taking let yourself off the hook. And because my grandfather had a butcher shop, and in that butcher shop, now this was many years ago, because I was just a little girl, and I remember this, it stuck in my mind. Then that refrigerator, big walk-in refrigerator, were these great big hooks that he used to hang the meat on in order to, butcher it for his clients. So I always laugh and I picture that hook and just taking myself and taking myself off the hook. So if that helps anyone, to allow them to picture my grandfather's meat hook and allow yourself to take yourself off the hook and allow yourself to just be what you need to be at the time you need to be it.
Oh gosh, I feel that one viscerally. Uh, which actually is a great metaphor because guilt and shame can be very painful. And yeah, letting yourself off the hook is to disallow the pain, I guess, or allow yourself to feel freedom from the pain.
Release it.
Yeah. I think it's something that is way easier said than done.
Oh, definitely.
So maybe the multitude, and I don't know why I'm feeling Jesus right now too, or Joe, as we've come to call him. Has any sort of spiritual guidance on that? Like, maybe people don't realize that they can call on spiritual help for that. Because I do think, you see it in a lot of 12-step programs where people have a lot of guilt or shame for the behaviors that they did under the influence, or shame around who they were, and it hinders who they want to become. And that often there's like a spiritual solution. And I don't mean religious, I mean spiritual. So what can the multitude, or any other ascended masters that are hanging around, want to share about how they can help people to free themselves of the guilt and shame that they might feel on this earth plane?
It is important to understand that when one comes to the earth plane, one allows oneself to experience many, many different things of being, different feelings of being, different experiences of being, just being. And when one allows oneself to believe that they are less than who they really are, then they put themselves into a place of disallowance of being. Therefore, when it is that one moves forward and says, I didn't like my behavior, I didn't like what I did in such and such a case, and I am so sorry for having completed that process that way, and I am willing to move myself forward. Then it is important for one to understand that when one moves oneself forward, one is able to release the feelings of disillusionment in such a way as to say, this is who I am, this is what I know, this is what I want. And when one can move forward from that place of knowing, what one's behavior was is no longer relevant. There was a learning in the process, there was a knowing in the process, and now there is a moving forward in the process. Do not be concerned. If one is having difficulty releasing the feelings around the experience, those feelings of guilt and shame and disillusionment of being, we would highly recommend that one allow oneself to breathe, allow oneself to sit quietly and breathe for 3 minutes, for 5 minutes. Nothing more is necessary. There is no allegiance to anyone other than yourself and your breathing. And when you can allow yourself to move forward in that state of being, you will allow, it's like I can feel it. You will allow yourself to feel very much better. In our estimation, it is a matter of acknowledging oneself, allowing oneself to be who one is when one is, and allowing oneself to breathe for a few minutes at a time. That is all that is required. When one is ready to release the feeling, one will release the feeling. Do not be concerned.
Well, I love how, I'm asking this question and I'm thinking like, they'll be like, just calling us and we're there for you. And they're like, there's no allegiance necessary to anyone but yourself. And it's as simple as breathing.
Right.
Like, that's how simple it is. We complicate it and we like to put like all this mysticism around it.
They're there with you in your super self and spirit. So
Yeah.
you need to breathe and connect with yourself, basically.
Can they say more about, because clearly the breath is very important. I mean, we've heard this through so many different traditions, spiritual traditions, about the breath is always spoken of. And it seems to be the highway between our human self and our spiritual self. I don't know. I guess it feels like there's more to be said about the breath. And of course, me and my human mind, I want to understand the mechanics of it and I want them to explain it in ways that I understand. And I get the feeling they probably won't. But I just feel like there's more to be said about the breath, that we could learn more about that. And I know it's simple, but I don't know. What else can they share with us about the importance of the breath?
It is important to understand it is the be all and the end all on the earth plane. One requires breath to move oneself forward, whether it be on the physical level or on the emotional level. When one is able to move oneself in breath, one is able to allow oneself to connect with oneself in spirit. And when one allows oneself to connect with oneself in spirit, one allows oneself to connect with oneself in all that one is and knows. When one moves forward in the breathing area of being, one allows oneself the connection required to allow oneself to be. When one is on the earth plane, one believes there is a great deal more required to be. However, there is breathing. It is the breath that allows oneself to connect with oneself and spirit. And when one on the earth plane connects with oneself and spirit, one is able to allow the information to flow. One is able to allow the healing self to flow. And one is able to say, okay, this is who I am on the earth plane. This is what I know. This is what I want. And when one knows what one wants, one is able to move forward in that direction. In our estimation, it is quite right that one understand that breath is involved in everything on the earth plane, as that is what is required in order to it's like be alive on the earth plane. However, that is only on the physical sense. When one connects oneself with breath in the spiritual sense, one is able to access oneself beautifully on the of knowing all of who one is. Do not be concerned. That makes sense?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, I just feel like I gleaned like a deeper appreciation for the breath.
Okay.
And this is what I heard. So they first said the breath is the be all end all. Literally,
Right.
you
Literally,
can't be here unless you're breathing,
right.
right? You're born into your first breath. You cannot be on the earth plane physically manifested without the breath.
Right.
And also, it's the end all. When you stop breathing, you die. Like, I know this is very basic. It's just landing in a different spiritual sense for me. Like, I'm talking about incarnation. And like, we're just like, this is just Kelly, but like, my soul is so much bigger. And my existence and each one of us is so much bigger than just this. This is like just a fractal of who I am. And I'm lucky to be here like this, but I can only do it because of the breath. I mean,
But
it's elementary, but it makes sense. Like
yeah,
it's just landing different, I guess.
yeah. But then that breath connects you with that spiritual self, that spiritual part of you where your all knowing is.
Yeah. So like, how powerful is that to know that if you just breathe, you can glean greater knowing about who you are, about the universe, about universal truths, um, about clarity of mind, where you want to go, how you move forward, your decisions. Like, if you just breathe, you don't have to like go out and seek advice, and you just have to breathe. And that clarity comes through, like, through that connection.
Well,
Um,
I think earth plane advice you have to I mean, maybe I've lived many incarnations before, but I've never lived one like this. So
right.
on this earth plane, I need advice, maybe from others who have had experience in this lifetime to help me with what I need to know in this lifetime. But with my connection with myself, that's all I need to do is breathe, because there's a lot more information that is contained in my spiritual self, my super self, that will allow myself to bring it to me if I should need it or when I need it, or maybe not in like how I'm going to, we'll say, fix dinner today. However, it lets me know I need to fix dinner, that kind of thing. It's on a higher, greater level. That
Yeah. But also, like, let's say it's something like, I got to get my car fixed, and you have five options, and you don't know which one.
right,
Breath can help you to make the decision.
right.
Of it brings clarity.
Yes.
And then healing, like it they talked about healing through the breath. And I remember, I mean, Ginny, I suffer from migraines. And I remember one day when I was listening to someone talk about how, the simplicity of breathing o- oxygenates the cells and cleanses them so that they can heal, right? That oxygenation of the cells is healing. So I had a migraine and I did not feel like getting out of bed to like get anything. So I just breathed for like a long time, deeply. And I just imagine that every breath I'm sending new life to cleanse and heal those cells. And maybe I'm talking about it biologically wrong, but I don't know if it's cells or whatever. But I just imagined it as a cleansing breath, and we use that term. And I did, I got rid of my headache just from breathing.
Yeah.
So like that the breath is that powerful to heal as well. I don't know, it's just landing for me differently. Maybe this sounds very elementary to some of our listeners, but um the power of the breath.
That's important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things, just to continue on, um I'm still thinking about my original topics, but I'm trying to figure out how to tie them in now that I've been re-educated. Um, grief.
Mhm.
A lot of times you'll hear, oh, grief gets stuck in the lungs. And now here we are talking about breathing. I imagine that breathing can help with releasing grief. But I kind of want to talk about grief a little bit.
I
So,
I know it's helped me with with let's see. I have brought with me grief from other lifetimes. I know that. And often an experience in this lifetime will repeat itself in order for you to acknowledge it, experience it, and know to work on it. But I also have, I know I get like, I don't want to say chest pains, but lungs, asthma, and lung issues, just breathing issues. So lots of times, excuse me, lots of times I will just breathe and focus on healing that. Because for me, any issue will come through as a pain. I don't know if that does for everyone, but it does for me. So I'll focus on that pain itself, and then I'll breathe and allow the energy to come in, and I'll call in Reiki energy, or I'll call in a Shambhala energy. And my favorite is the higher realms healing energy. So I'll just bring those in as I can and allow it to work. And it heals not only the physical pain that I'm feeling and helps in the clearing, but it also helps heal the it's like the emotion. You need to have it in order to bring it up. But my understanding is that it will heal the issue that in past lifetimes that brought it to me now to heal. So it not only heals the current, um, fleeting pain or whatever it is, but it also heals that past life issue that I've come here to heal. So
yeah,
that's what I know about it.
I love that, Ginny. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. Sometimes I think I just speak too much about my own stuff sometimes, but
No, it's helpful because I think for me, I can relate and it gives me an opportunity to lean into, is that true for me or not? And
Mhm.
I often can relate. There's a reason we're friends, right? I often can relate to your experiences. I most definitely, like, yours tends to be more lung, mine is more like nervous system. I get a lot of nervous system twinges. And often it's my body's way of calling attention to a feeling I haven't acknowledged, um, that needs to be sat with, breathed into, so that I can feel that feeling and release it from my body so that my body doesn't have to keep calling my attention to it. Um, so, well, what does the multitude have to say about that? I know part of it they're going to say, well, that's your experience and not everyone has that experience. And that's true. Like, our audience doesn't need to internalize this as universal truth. It's just how Ginny and I work, but maybe the multitude has more to share on this topic.
It is important to understand it is the process. When one comes to the earth plane, one brings with them many issues or items to heal and cannot be aware of these issues without re-experiencing on some level or another. When one is able to focus on that level, whatever it is that they're feeling, they are able to allow themselves to, it's like heal the feeling. When one feels the feeling, one is able to heal the feeling. Therefore, in our estimation, we would highly recommend that when one allows oneself to focus on an issue of being, whether it be physical or emotional, one is able to say, okay, this is what I'm feeling, and I am going to, it's like you need to pay attention to it. In our estimation, when one pays attention to that little twinge of whatever, one is allowing oneself the ability to connect with oneself. One connects with oneself by breath. When one allows oneself to breathe and connect with oneself, one allows oneself to access that part of oneself in spirit. Therefore, allowing oneself to connect with the issue as it had been created, therefore allowing oneself to heal the issue that was created, therefore allowing oneself on the earth plane to heal as well. We would highly recommend that each one focus on your breath. If it is that you are allowing yourself to feel your feelings, you will allow yourself to heal your feelings. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Interesting. Okay, so obviously I'm listening and I'm trying to apply it to my experience. So I think what I heard them say is like these nerve twinges that I get probably were created either in this lifetime or a past lifetime based on some level of emotional feeling I had with an experience that did not get resolved in the moment.
Right.
And so now here I am, fast forward to now, and I'm feeling these nerve twinges. And I might not know what the emotional attachment is to it or the experience, but my body is calling me to it in order to receive healing and resolution and clearing the karma, as they say. I don't know if it's the same category, but and if all I do is pay attention to that twinge and breathe, I don't have to know the emotion, I don't have to know the experience, but I am just by paying attention to it and breathing simultaneously, I am healing that which was created in that instance. I'm healing that situation. Is that what they're saying?
Much, yeah. We cannot know what the actual cause is because it's of a past life and we have no recollection of that. So,
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, so for me, it comes into a little pain here, a little pain there. So I will acknowledge that pain. Oh, that hurts. That doesn't feel good. And it goes away pretty quickly. But then it might come back. So I'll acknowledge it again and breathe, breathe. And sometimes I'll focus on the breathing and sometimes I'm in the middle of something, but then I will always recognize it. And the cause of it is not this lifetime. The feeling that I have is of this lifetime. And for me, it's like noticing, acknowledging it's there and breathing. And 9 times out of 10, it goes away.
Okay, but for those who aren't aware of this, right, and they're not interested in these topics we're discussing, and they're going to the chiropractor, they're still getting healing in a similar way. Like more and more these days, you hear about people who are like, I went to the doctor, I got this test, they can't figure it out. And I often think like, oh, there's potentially a past life issue there or a suppressed emotion from this lifetime. Um, yeah, but I think too, it's important to acknowledge that sometimes, especially if you're not aware of these concepts, and you're not doing the acknowledge and breathing together, just going to the doctor or going to a practitioner is bringing awareness to that thing
Right.
and getting the help and attention that thing needs in order to heal.
It's acknowledging it, yes. You may be able to do it yourself, or you may not. So you go to a chiropractor, and in doing so, you're acknowledging that there is an issue
Yeah,
and you're allowing yourself to relax or rest while the chiropractor does whatever a chiropractor does. At the same time, you're breathing, you're relaxing, you're breathing, you're acknowledging, and you're also allowing help.
yeah. Health comes in many ways.
Yeah, that's how
I
I see
think that's good to point out because I think I know for me, like the more understanding I have of how energy works and how it shows up in our bodies, I often can get really hard on myself for like not being able to fix it myself, right? Like I have all these tools and these strategies and I have this knowing and this understanding, but like, yeah, to acknowledge that sometimes it requires help. Huh. Maybe the multitude can share some deeper understanding of why some things require help from another and why some things can be resolved on one's own.
We would like you all to understand that you're on the earth plane for a reason. You are on the earth plane to love, to care, to heal, to allow. You are also in a physical body. And your physical body, although reliant on all those other parts of you, are in a situation where one cannot know everything about one's own physical body. Therefore, one allows oneself to it's like go to or experience the help of experts in their field that have studied the physical body, experts in their field who have allowed themselves the learning of I'm getting epistemology, but that's not the word I want. It's like the
Like biology or
no,
any of the ologies, really. Could be a multitude of ologies.
it'd be like a counselor, the emotional aspects of being. Therefore, in our estimation, one requires help in many areas on the earth plane, and one can heal some things for oneself, but one cannot heal everything for oneself. When one is of the ability to heal some things, it is quite a beautiful process. However, if one relies on oneself to heal everything, it is unattainable. Do not be concerned, all is love.
I like hearing that. It lets me off the hook. Ginny, I looked up epitomology and it says epitomology appears to be a misspelling of the word epistemology, which is the philosophical study of knowledge, including nature, origin, and limits. It explores questions about what we can know, how we know it, and the sources of our knowledge. So
Like that.
you were actually pretty spot on with that. So have you ever heard that word before?
I didn't know what it meant though. I have heard of it, but I mean, I knew it was the right word, but it wasn't the right word for what I was thinking they were saying. So,
Well,
because they were referring to like a counselor, therapist type counselor
yeah,
with that, and so, but I didn't know what epitomology meant in that respect. So,
lost in translation, I guess.
thanks for checking that out.
Um, okay, so we're getting, I don't know, do I have time for one more question, Ginny?
Um, uh, a quick one, yeah.
Well, just if they have anything else they want to say, just to come back to grief. And if they want that to be a separate episode, that's fine too.
It is important to understand that grief is something that is available to each one to heal many parts of oneself. when one is in a grief process. It is in the respect of feeling grief at loss, feeling grief at growth, feeling grief at understanding of being. There are many terminologies for grief. Therefore, we would highly recommend that you ask another time, and we will gladly go into the many aspects of grief of being. Do not be concerned, all is love.
Okay, fair enough. Sounds like a future episode.
Yes, it sounds good.
Oh, this is good. It took us in places I didn't expect, but I really do appreciate it.
They always go where we don't expect them to go.
Yeah, and I really appreciate the insights about the physical body and I always you hear people say my soul is on a spiritual journey, and it's like, well, the body's the one on the journey, right? The soul goes on forever and ever and ever.
Okay.
It's the body that's limited and that literally goes on the journey, feels
Yeah,
all the things.
because basically we are limitless beings. Our beings are limitless, our bodies are not.
Yeah. So that's the one on the journey, literally walking forward and moving us forward. Um, so it makes a lot of sense what they shared today.
All right.
Thanks, Ginny, for channeling.
You for your questions and conversation. And thank you, multitude.
Yeah, thanks, multitude.
It's like you are quite welcome.
And
Okay.
thanks to our viewers. Thanks for watching. I'll see you
Thank
next
you.
time.
Thank you everyone for listening and being with us. Appreciate it.
See you next time on the Self Connection.
Bye-bye.